Charlotte peered through the living room blinds, her heart pounding. The HOA tow truck was already attached to her beloved RV, ready to haul it away. How dare they? After 15 years on the HOA board, she knew the rules inside and out. This was a blatant abuse of power. She burst through the front door, waving her hands. "Stop! What do you think you're doing?" Her voice trembled with furious indignation. The two men in the tow truck paused, exchanging a glance. "We've got orders to impound this vehicle, ma'am. It's in violation of the HOA covenants." Charlotte squared her shoulders, jaw set. "I'm the zoning commissioner. You can't touch my RV." The taller man scoffed. "Sorry, but those rules don't apply to us. We have to follow the HOA guidelines, not your personal position." Her eyes narrowed. "I'll have your jobs for this. You have no idea who you're messing with." The shorter man shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should call the board president, just to be sure." "Don't bother." Charlotte marched to her car, fishing out her phone. "I'm calling the police. You'll be the ones in trouble when I'm done." The men exchanged another uneasy glance, but stubbornly remained by the RV. Charlotte's fingers flew over the screen, already dialing 911. This was an outrage. She'd spent years promoting the interests of homeowners on the board. How dare they turn on her like this? As the operator answered, Charlotte took a deep breath, forcing her voice to remain calm and steady. "Yes, hello. I'd like to report an illegal towing in progress. My name is Charlotte Wilkins, the zoning commissioner, and these men are trying to impound my RV despite my authority." The operator's response was clipped and professional. "Okay, ma'am. I'm dispatching an officer to your location now. Please stay on the line and provide any additional details." Charlotte glared at the two men, who were now whispering frantically to each other. "They're claiming it violates HOA rules, but I'm telling you, I have the power to override those decisions. This is an abuse of authority, and I won't stand for it." The operator's voice was soothing, if a bit skeptical. "I understand you're upset, ma'am. The officer will sort this out when he arrives. Just stay calm and let him handle the situation." Charlotte gripped the phone tightly, knuckles turning white. "I am calm. But these men are about to learn a very hard lesson about crossing the zoning commissioner." She ended the call, striding back toward the RV. The men eyed her warily, hands hovering near their waists. Charlotte felt a surge of triumph. They knew they were in trouble now. This was her neighborhood, her domain. No one was going to illegally tow her prized possession, not on her watch. The roar of a siren pierced the air, and the men exchanged a nervous glance. Charlotte allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Game on. The police cruiser screeched to a halt, and a burly officer strode over to the standoff. "All right, what seems to be the problem here?" Charlotte stepped forward, her voice stern. "Officer, these men are trying to illegally tow my RV, despite my authority as the zoning commissioner." The officer arched an eyebrow, glancing between the men and Charlotte. "Is that so? Let's hear their side of the story." The taller man straightened, squaring his shoulders. "We received a complaint that this RV was in violation of the HOA covenants. As per our regulations, we're here to impound the vehicle." Charlotte cut him off, eyes flashing. "And I'm telling you, as the zoning commissioner, I have the authority to override those regulations. This is my property, and you have no right to touch it." The officer held up a hand. All right, let's all take a deep breath here." He turned to the men. "Do you have any written documentation of the HOA's decision to tow this vehicle?" The shorter man shifted uncomfortably. Well, no, not exactly. We were just following orders from the board." "I see." The officer's gaze hardened. "And do you have any official documentation that Ms. Wilkins' position as zoning commissioner doesn't grant her the authority to exempt her own property from HOA rules?" The men exchanged a worried glance, suddenly looking much less confident. Charlotte allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. The officer continued, his tone stern. Unless you can produce concrete evidence that you're acting within the law, I'm going to have to ask you to unattach that RV and leave the premises immediately. Attempting to impound a vehicle without proper authorization is a serious offense. The taller man opened his mouth, then snapped it shut again, his face flushing with embarrassment. Muttering under his breath, he began disconnecting the tow truck. Charlotte stepped forward, her voice dripping with disdain. I hope you've learned a valuable lesson today, gentlemen. Don't mess with the zoning commissioner. The officer nodded, a hint of amusement in his expression. Ma'am, I'd suggest you follow up with the HOA board to clarify your authority. But for now, it seems you've won this round. Charlotte inclined her head, her chin raised. Oh, I plan to. They won't be making this mistake again. As the tow truck pulled away, Charlotte felt a surge of triumph. No one was going to trample all over her rights, not in her own neighborhood. She'd spent years building up her reputation and influence, and she wasn't about to let a bunch of power-hungry HOA goons take it all away. The next morning, Charlotte stormed into the HOA office, her expression thunderous. The two board members seated at the front desk looked up in surprise. Where's the president? She demanded, her voice sharp and authoritative. The younger of the two board members, a timid-looking woman, stammered, and Mr. Daniels is in a meeting right now. Can I help you with something? Charlotte fixed her with a withering glare. You most certainly cannot. I need to speak with him immediately. This is a matter of the utmost importance. The older man, a balding, middle-aged fellow, cleared his throat nervously. Is there a problem? Ms. Wilkins, we weren't aware of any issues. Oh, there's a problem? All right, Charlotte snapped. Your goons tried to illegally tow my RV yesterday, in direct violation of my authority as zoning commissioner. The two board members exchanged a worried glance. But we didn't authorize anything like that, the woman protested weakly. Charlotte's eyes narrowed. Well, someone did. And I want to know who, and why they thought they could get away with it. Before the board members could respond, the office door swung open, and a tall, imposing man strode out. What's all this commotion? He demanded, his brow furrowed. Charlotte turned to face him, her chin raised defiantly. Mr. Daniels, I presume. I'm here to discuss your attempt to have my RV illegally towed yesterday. Daniels' eyes widened briefly, then he schooled his features into a neutral expression. Yes, Ms. Wilkins. I heard about that incident. Please, come into my office, and we can discuss this matter privately. Charlotte followed him, her mind racing. The fact that he hadn't immediately denied the incident was telling. She had a feeling this was about to get very interesting. Once they were behind closed doors, Daniels gestured to a chair. Please, have a seat. Charlotte remained standing, her arms crossed over her chest. I think I'll stand, thank you. Now, why don't you tell me exactly what's going on here? Daniels let out a heavy sigh. Look, Ms. Wilkins, I'll be honest with you. There's been some concern among the board members about the way you've been using your position as zoning commissioner. Charlotte's brow furrowed. Concern? What exactly are you implying? Well, it's come to our attention that you've been using your authority to, shall we say, circumvent certain HOA regulations. We're concerned that you're abusing your power for personal gain. Charlotte's eyes narrowed dangerously. I think you'd better elaborate on that, Mr. Daniels. Daniels shifted uncomfortably in his chair. It's just, well, there have been rumors that you've been using your position to approve developments and zoning changes that benefit you and your friends, while ignoring the concerns of other homeowners. Charlotte's nostrils flared with indignation. That is an outrageous accusation, and you know it. I have been nothing but fair and impartial in my duties as zoning commissioner. This is clearly a pathetic attempt to undermine my authority and discredit me. Daniels held up his hands in a placating gesture. Now, let's not get carried away. I'm simply saying that the board has some reservations about your conduct. We feel it's in the best interest of the community to, well, temporarily suspend your position as zoning commissioner while we investigate these concerns. Charlotte's jaw dropped, her eyes wide with disbelief. You can't be serious. This is a blatant abuse of power, and I won't stand for it. Daniels cleared his throat, his expression grave. I'm afraid I am quite serious, Ms. Wilkins. The decision has already been made. You are hereby relieved of your duties as zoning commissioner, effective immediately. Charlotte opened her mouth to protest, but Daniels raised a hand to silence her. I'd advise you to accept this gracefully, for the sake of the community. Otherwise, we may be forced to take further action. Charlotte's blood boiled with rage. How dare they do this to her? She had dedicated years of her life to serving this community, and now they were trying to strip her of her hard-earned authority. This was a personal vendetta, plain and simple. She took a deep, steadying breath, her eyes narrowing. This isn't over, Mr. Daniels. Not by a long shot. Charlotte stormed out of the HOA office, her mind racing. How dare they suspend her from her position as zoning commissioner? This was a blatant abuse of power, and she wasn't about to let it stand. As she marched to her car, her phone started ringing. Glancing at the screen, she saw it was her friend and ally on the HOA board, Samantha. Answering the call, Charlotte didn't even bother with a greeting. Samantha, did you hear what they've done? Samantha's voice was laced with concern. Yes, I just got the call. Charlotte, I'm so sorry. I had no idea they were planning this. Charlotte gripped the phone tightly, her knuckles turning white. Well, you need to do something about it. This is a clear retaliation against me for standing up to them. You have to get the board to reverse this decision. Samantha sighed heavily. I wish it were that simple, Charlotte. The vote was unanimous. Daniels and the others, they're determined to get rid of you. Charlotte's eyes narrowed. Then we'll just have to show them that I'm not going down without a fight. This is my neighborhood, Samantha. I won't let them push me out. Samantha's voice dropped to a whisper. I understand, but you have to be careful. Daniels and his cronies, they play dirty. If you push back too hard, they could try to bury you. Charlotte scoffed. I'm not afraid of them, Samantha. I've dedicated years of my life to this community, and I'm not about to let a bunch of power-hungry HOA board members take that away from me. I know, Samantha said, her voice laced with worry. But please, Charlotte, be careful. These people are ruthless, and they won't hesitate to use any means necessary to get what they want. Charlotte's expression hardened. Then so be it. I'm not going to back down, Samantha. I'm going to fight them, tooth and nail, until they realize they can't push me around. Samantha let out a resigned sigh. All right, Charlotte. I'll do what I can to support you, but please, just be careful, okay? I will, Charlotte assured her, her voice firm. Thanks for the warning, Samantha. I'll be in touch. With that, she ended the call and slid her phone back into her pocket. Her mind was already racing, formulating a plan of attack. She wasn't about to let Daniels and his cronies get away with this. She would fight them with every tool at her disposal, no matter the cost. As she started her car and pulled out of the parking lot, a determined glint shone in her eyes. This was war, and she was more than ready to take them on. Charlotte spent the next few days feverishly compiling evidence and building her case against the HOA board. She scoured through past meeting minutes, project approvals, and financial records, searching for any sign of wrongdoing or improper conduct. At the same time, she reached out to her network of allies and supporters within the community, rallying them to her cause. She knew she couldn't take on the HOA board alone, and she needed to mobilize as much public support as possible. When the day of the emergency HOA meeting arrived, Charlotte strode into the community center, her head held high. The room was already packed with concerned homeowners, all eager to hear what she had to say. As the meeting began, Daniels took the podium, his expression grave. Thank you all for being here today. As you know, we've had to make some difficult decisions regarding the zoning commissioner position. Charlotte didn't wait for him to continue. She stood up, her voice ringing out across the room. Colleagues, residents of this community, I'm here to tell you that the decision to suspend me as zoning commissioner is a gross abuse of power. Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd, and Daniels held up a hand, his brow furrowed. Ms. Wilkins, I must ask that you refrain from disrupting this meeting. We have a process to follow. Charlotte ignored him, her gaze sweeping across the room. For years, I have dedicated myself to ensuring the fair and impartial development of our neighborhood. I have upheld the values and interests of this community, always putting the needs of our residents first. She paused, her eyes narrowing. But now, it seems that the HOA board has decided to turn against me, based on nothing more than unfounded rumors and baseless accusations. Daniels shifted uncomfortably, his expression darkening. Ms. Wilkins, I must insist that you allow me to continue with the meeting. We have important matters to discuss. Charlotte plowed on, her voice rising with passion. Important matters? Like the fact that the board has been approving developments that clearly benefit their own interests, while ignoring the concerns of the broader community. The crowd erupted in murmurs and shouts, and Daniels held up his hands, his face flushed with anger. Order, please. Ms. Wilkins, if you cannot conduct yourself in a civil manner, I will have no choice but to have you removed from the premises. Charlotte refused to back down, her chin raised defiantly. You can try, Mr. Daniels, but I can assure you that the residents of this community will not stand idly by while you abuse your power. The room erupted in a chorus of shouts and applause, and Daniels' expression darkened further. It was clear that Charlotte had struck a chord with the crowd, and the HOA board was now on the defensive. As the meeting descended into chaos, Charlotte allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. This was just the beginning. She was prepared to fight tooth and nail to reclaim her rightful position, and she knew that the support of the community was on her side. In the days following the contentious HOA meeting, Charlotte's campaign to reclaim her position as zoning commissioner only intensified. She continued to dig deeper into the board's activities, uncovering a web of questionable deals and conflicts of interest. Armed with this damning evidence, she took her case to the local media, granting interviews and holding press conferences to expose the HOA's misdeeds. The news coverage quickly gained traction, and soon the story was being picked up by regional and even national outlets. Daniels and the rest of the HOA board found themselves on the defensive, forced to respond to the growing public outcry. They attempted to discredit Charlotte, painting her as a disgruntled former official with a personal vendetta. But her meticulous documentation and the overwhelming support from the community made their efforts increasingly futile. As the pressure mounted, cracks began to appear in the board's united front. Samantha, Charlotte's ally, reported that some of the less entrenched members were starting to waver, concerned about the potential fallout from the scandal. Seizing the opportunity, Charlotte arranged a private meeting with Daniels, determined to negotiate a resolution. This has gone on long enough, Mr. Daniels, she said, her voice calm but firm. It's time we put an end to this nonsense and restore order to our community. Daniels, his brow furrowed, eyed her warily. What are you proposing, Ms. Wilkins? Simple, Charlotte replied. Reinstate me as zoning commissioner, and I'll call off the media circus. We can go back to business as usual and put this whole mess behind us. Daniel's expression darkened. You can't seriously expect us to just give in to your demands. The board has made its decision, and we're standing by it. Charlotte leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Then you leave me no choice. I will continue to expose your corruption and abuse of power until you have no choice but to capitulate. Daniels let out a frustrated sigh. This is completely unnecessary, Ms. Wilkins. The board has legitimate concerns about your conduct, and we're well within our rights to take this action. Legitimate concerns? Charlotte scoffed. This is nothing more than a petty power play, and you know it. You're afraid that I'll uncover your underhanded dealings and bring them to light. Daniels opened his mouth to retort, but Charlotte cut him off. Save it, Daniels. I know you're worried about the fallout from this scandal, and you should be. Because I'm not going to stop until I've reclaimed my rightful position and brought your entire corrupt regime crashing down. The two locked eyes, the tension in the room palpable. Finally, Daniels broke the silence, his voice resigned. All right, Ms. Wilkins, you win. We'll reinstate you as zoning commissioner, effective immediately. Charlotte allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. Wise decision, Mr. Daniels. Now let's get to work on restoring some order to this community, shall we? As she strode out of the meeting, Charlotte felt a surge of satisfaction. She had won this round, but she knew the battle was far from over. The HOA board would undoubtedly continue to try and undermine her, and she would have to remain vigilant. But for now, she reveled in her victory, knowing that she had shown them that she was a force to be reckoned with. In the weeks following her reinstatement as zoning commissioner, Charlotte worked tirelessly to restore trust and transparency within the HOA. She implemented new policies and procedures to ensure that all decisions were made in a fair and impartial manner, with the needs of the community at the forefront. Despite the ongoing resistance from Daniels and his allies on the board, Charlotte's unwavering commitment to her duties and her willingness to listen to the concerns of the residents slowly began to win them over. The community rallied behind her, recognizing the depth of her dedication and the integrity she brought to the role. As Charlotte navigated the delicate balance of diplomacy and firm leadership, she knew that the battle was far from over. Daniels and his cronies were still biding their time, waiting for an opportunity to strike back. But Charlotte was determined to stay one step ahead of them, using her sharp political instincts and her deep understanding of the HOA's inner workings to outmaneuver them at every turn. One day, as Charlotte was reviewing a proposal for a new housing development, her phone rang. Glancing at the caller ID, she felt a surge of dread. It was Samantha, her ally on the board. Charlotte, we've got a problem. Samantha's voice was laced with urgency. Daniels and the others, they're planning to call an emergency meeting to try and remove you from your position, once and for all. Charlotte's heart sank, but she refused to let her panic show. All right, Samantha, tell me everything you know. Samantha's voice was hushed, as if she was afraid of being overheard. They've been gathering evidence, trying to find any kind of dirt they can use against you. And they're planning to ambush you at the meeting, catch you off guard, and force a vote. Charlotte's mind raced, formulating a plan of action. Okay, Samantha, here's what I need you to do. Make sure you have a copy of every document they plan to present. I want to see it all beforehand, so I can be prepared. Got it, Samantha replied, her voice steadier now. I'll do my best to stall them, but you know Daniels, he's going to move quickly on this. I understand, Charlotte said, her voice grim. Just make sure you get me that information as soon as possible. I'll be ready for them, I promise. As she hung up the phone, Charlotte felt a wave of determination wash over her. She had come too far to let Daniels and his cronies take her down now. This was her community, her domain, and she wasn't about to let them strip her of her authority without a fight. Steeling herself for the battle ahead, Charlotte began poring over the documents Samantha had managed to obtain. She knew that Daniels and the board were playing for keeps, and she would need to be at the top of her game to outmaneuver them. This was war, and Charlotte was more than ready to take them on. The day of the emergency HOA meeting dawned, and Charlotte arrived early, her mind racing with contingency plans. She knew that Daniels and his allies were desperate, and they would stop at nothing to remove her from her position. As the room began to fill, Charlotte scanned the crowd, searching for familiar faces. She spotted Samantha in the back, and their eyes met briefly. Samantha gave her a civil nod, conveying the message that the information Charlotte had requested was in hand. Daniels stepped up to the podium, his expression grim. "Thank you all for being here today. We have some urgent matters to discuss regarding the zoning commissioner position." Charlotte took a deep breath, bracing herself for the onslaught. She knew that the board had likely dug up every possible piece of dirt they could find, and she was determined to counter their every move. As Daniels began to lay out his case, Charlotte listened intently, cataloging each accusation and preparing her rebuttal. She could feel the tension in the room rising as the residents waited with bated breath to see how the drama would unfold. When it was her turn to speak, Charlotte stood tall, her voice unwavering. "Colleagues, residents, I'm here to tell you that the accusations against me are nothing more than a desperate attempt to discredit my work and undermine my authority." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and Daniel's expression darkened. "Ms. Wilkins, I must insist that you refrain from making baseless claims. We have substantial evidence to support our position." Charlotte held up a hand, her gaze steady. "I'm well aware of the evidence you've gathered, Mr. Daniels, and I can assure you that it is nothing more than a carefully curated collection of half-truths and misleading information." She paused, her eyes sweeping across the room. "But I'm not here to engage in a war of words. I'm here to present the facts and to show you all that the real corruption and abuse of power lies with this board, not with me." Daniels opened his mouth to interrupt, but Charlotte plowed on, her voice rising with conviction. "For years, I have dedicated myself to this community, working tirelessly to ensure fair and impartial development. And now, you want to strip me of my position because I refuse to turn a blind eye to your underhanded dealings." The crowd erupted in murmurs and shouts of support, and Daniels visibly wilted under the onslaught. Charlotte allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. She had them on the ropes now. As the meeting descended into chaos, Charlotte continued to skillfully dismantle the board's case, exposing their lies and manipulations for all to see. By the time the vote was called, it was clear that the tide had turned in her favor. When the final tally was announced, the room erupted in cheers and applause. Charlotte had won, and Daniels and his cronies had been soundly defeated. As she stood there, basking in the glow of her victory, Charlotte knew that this was just the beginning. The battle for the soul of her community was far from over, but she was more determined than ever to fight for what was right. With her reputation and authority fully restored, Charlotte knew that she was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. This was her domain, and she was ready to defend it, no matter the cost.